Hello, today we're talking about classifying bacteria, viruses, protists, and the fungi. This is Biology B, Lesson 2 for Primavera. So objectives for today, I can identify various examples of life, and I can explain the role of bacteria, protists, and fungi in the real world. So bacteria and virus, deadly, but not necessary. So what are bacteria? They're prokaryotes, and they can be either rod-shaped, which are called bacillus. They can be spherical, which is coccus. They can be spiral, which is spirillum. And then over here on the left, you have the eubacteria, which is the majority of them, most common. It means true bacteria. Then next to that, you have the archaebacteria, which archae means ancient, and then these particular ones live in extreme environments, so hot, cold, low, very deep, very high. There's a whole bunch of different things. And then eukarya, which I switched down to the domains. So the bacteria, archaea, and eukarya are the domains. And within the domain eukarya, you have kingdoms, protists, plantae, fungi, and animalia. All right. So some types of bacteria can be strep, tuberculosis, tetanus, even cavities are caused by bacteria. And they can be destroyed by using antibiotics or pasteurization. So they pasteurize our food so we don't get, salmonella poisoning and some of those other things. So what are bacteria? Well, eubacteria can be both heterotrophs or autotrophs, and they live everywhere. Do you know what a heterotroph is? I know we're just kind of starting into the class. So hopefully you said they're ones that feed on others, whether it's like grasshoppers eating grass, that type of thing, or a lion eating a deer, that. Okay, what about an autotroph? Does anybody know what an autotroph does? It's a self-feeder. It produces its own food. Auto, because it's automatic. It does it on its own. Then eubacteria, or not eubacteria, but bacteria itself, so one of the three domains, bacteria, is symbiotic with other organisms most of the time. So you've got bacteria in your intestines. They're used for decomposition, they're used for recycling, and even digesting. All right, question time. Tell me how you could tell if a prokaryote belongs to either a eubacteria or the archaebacteria categories. I'll give you a second to think about it. All right, so eubacteria are helpful and harmful to humans, and they have what's called a peptidoglycan. Very hard to say, in the outer covering. Archaebacteria live in extreme environments. Interestingly enough, they do not infect humans, and they have no peptidoglycan in their cell membrane. That's also how they can tell what it is, because they have a test to see if, to identify whether it has peptidoglycan on it or not. So, what's a virus? Is a virus alive or not alive? This causes problems for many people. We'll talk about this in 1 second. Well, no, let's talk about it right now. Okay, so bacteria, they don't grow or develop on their own. They don't have any respiration on their own, and they can only reproduce within a host. So they are not considered alive. The biggest clue to that is that they can only reproduce within a host. Okay, so one of the things in order for it to be alive is it has to be able to reproduce on its own. So flu virus, HIV, those types of things. They're not alive. Doesn't mean they're not deadly or dangerous or just annoying. So here, I like this particular picture because this is a bacteriophage. It's a virus that infects bacteria. Yes, that can happen. Uh, so you have the capsid, which encompasses the head all the way down to the tail. You have the sheath, which is the coil around it. You have DNA within the head. You have the collar. Then you have the tail portion. And then you have a base plate. And then you've got those wonderful funky looking legs. This thing of nightmares, huh? So when a virus is inactivated inside a host DNA, it's considered inert. So let's talk about what that means. Let me see if this, there we go. So now we can play this. Kind of cool, huh? I like that video. Oh. Oh, come on. There we go. All right. Sometimes I have to be smarter. Okay, so you've got two different cycles. The cycle that was described in the video is the lytic cycle. So the virus, if you look on the right, number one, the virus infects the cell and inserts its DNA. So you have viral DNA and host DNA. Then the viral DNA forms a circle, so plasmid. And then the viral DNA, if you look on the left, continues this lytic cycle. And if we're going up to the top, then number 4, in the lytic cycle, new viruses are synthesized. And then number 5, new viruses are released when the cell bursts. Okay, now, and in the lytic cycle, the virus is taking over that replication mechanism to do harm to the host cell to send out more virus. Now, it can go from the viral DNA forming a circle. In the lysogenic cycle, viral DNA will insert itself into the host DNA and just kind of sit there as it keeps replicating throughout the body. And at some point, the prophage will activate and then enter the lytic cycle. So you can have things, it's basically an inert segment of the DNA until something triggers it. Okay, so when it's in lysogenic cycle, it's replicating each time the cell divides because it's now part of the cell's DNA. Doesn't do any harm to the host during this cycle, but some sort of adverse event, like you're tired, you're sick, whatever, can any type of adverse event can trigger the lytic cycle so that it bursts, it creates and bursts, fills the body with virus. All right, does anyone know what it is called when a virus is inactivated inside a host DNA? I don't think I used that word at all, but I'll give you guys a chance here. Okay, the term that should be used is inert. So when it's inactivated, it is inert. Okay. So let's talk about protists. protists are all eukaryotes. Most of them are unicellular. Okay, so this is the domain eukarya. Fungi like protists are your molds, your slime molds, your water molds. I think we'll have a discussion question on whether slime molds cause the potato famine. I'll let you guys figure, or water molds even. Let you guys think about that one. Animal-like protists are sarcodines, ciliates, zooflagellates, sporozoans. Ciliates use those little tiny hairs to move. The sporozoans use what is called a pseudopodia, a fake foot, so it kind of stretches, and then the rest of the body comes up to the part that's stretched out. Sporozoans also produce spores. That's how they got their name. They have to use food vacuoles to digest their prey. They're single-celled eukaryotes. They're heterotrophs, so they eat other things. Yeah, they're kind of cool. So describe 2 features an animal-like protist has. Okay, so some of the choices would be food vacuoles. They can be called protozoa. They're single-celled. They're heterotrophs. That type of. I gotta stop saying that type of thing, huh, guys? Okay, so what is fungi? So I like this raccoon. I once befriended a mushroom. He was a fungi. Okay, I have bad jokes all over the place. So fungi, they're eukaryotes. They produce both asexually and sexually. I love these typos in this PowerPoint. The cell wall contains chitin, which is a complex carb. Very important. So let's look at fungi a little more specifically. This group includes the molds, club fungi, so the mushrooms on the right of that look kind of like clubs. The base looks like a club. Sac fungi and imperfect fungi. If you look over at the picture on the right, the top is called a cap. They have gills underneath, so when you go to the store, look at some mushrooms. They have gills underneath. They release spores. They have a stalk. They have hyphae, which help grow underground, help anchor it, and then they have underground hyphae. So, fungi. Continued. Helpers and harmers. So you have mycorrhizae, which help plants grow deeper into the soil. They help process the nitrogen, that type of thing. Again, I got to break that, huh? Then you also have lichens that can help create soil. So what happens with the lichens? They're usually the first responder, so to speak, in an environment, especially one that's been ravaged by fire, or like in Hawaii, the lava that keeps building. Eventually, lichen will arrive, and it's the green stuff on the rocks, and over time it breaks down the rocks into a soil, and then other things can grow. So it's a really unique process. Okay, so here's one really, really cool thing. So fungi, helpers and harmers. Zombie ants is a perfect example. You have a fungus that's found in the tropical rainforests, and it survives by controlling the carpenter ants. So number 1, the infection. So an ant walks through an area of the rainforest floor that has these spores. They, interestingly enough, excrete an enzyme that eats through the ant's exterior shell. After 2 days, the ant leaves the tree colony, because they live in trees, but they also come down to the ground. So then it leaves the colony, travels down to an area where humidity and temperature are optimal. So if you take a second here and look on the bottom right of your screen, you have forest floor at 0 feet, fungal zone at 1 foot, shrub at 5 feet, understory at 50 feet, so you got small trees, and the ant colony lives at 80 feet, Top of the canopy is 100 feet, and then there's emergent things bursting through the canopy at 150 feet. So it controls the ant, has it climb down to where it's perfect for it to grow. Then the ant will crawl onto a stem or the underside of a leaf, and it bites into it so it won't fall. So its mandibles clamp around that so it won't fall, and then it dies. So while it's there, you have the fungus growing. Use the internal organs of the ant for food, use the shell for protection. Then it gives off, not gives off, but it creates a stroma that grows out of the ant with spores in a little, the perithecal plate. And then once it's mature, it releases the spores and they fall to the ground, creating a 10 square foot killing zone, which will attack new ants. So that's how it continues to grow and spread. It uses ants, it throws it on the ground, and then ants walk through it. Some of the sci-fi shows do that too, use that concept. Now, some common sites for fungus here on the left be your scalp, chest, hands, groin, feet. So athlete's foot's a fungus, ringworm is a fungus, oh gosh, jock itch is a fungus. Those are just a few. So question, describe one role that bacteria, protists, and fungi play for life on Earth. So bacteria and fungi. We didn't cover this specifically in some areas, but we'll talk about it. Bacteria and fungi are decomposers, so they recycle nutrients. They also help with the nitrogen fixation in the soil, so it's like a fertilizer. Those are the mycorrhizae that we mentioned. They also produce food and medicine such as cheese, yogurt, sauerkraut, antibiotics, and they're both aerobic and anaerobic. Does anyone know what those two words mean? So aerobic is using oxygen and anaerobic is not using oxygen. It's without. Anything that starts with an A or an an, as in an, means no or not. So that's something to remember when you're reading, or scientific terms, those types of things. Anything that's a or an, well, aerobic doesn't fit that, but anaerobic does because it's an. So it varies. All right, and that is the end